After defeating Russia, Taliban Pakistan started to prove to be a bone of neck for America. America wanted the Taliban to remain subservient to us. Because we have supported him earlier and Pakistan was supporting America like a puppet. But the Taliban did not consider America as anything, rather they wanted to live according to their own ways within their own country. So, the United States made a plan to eliminate the Taliban from the world after September 11th under a big plan and openly threatened that we will bring you to the Stone Age, but the Taliban persisted and a war started during that time. It remains to be seen whether the United States has succeeded in achieving its goal, whether the Taliban have submitted to the United States, or whether the Taliban have continued to live their lives according to their own methods. There comes a time when the Taliban start facing severe problems for the US and create such situations that the US is stuck in a dead end. He wants to take all of Pakistan and escape from here. All this you are going to get in Aj's video, and you will also know what role Pakistan played in this whole story. You are watching the second part of the Taliban's life. Shia Islam. During the Taliban's initial reign from 1996 to 2001, they made efforts to attract Shias, especially Hazaras, by forming alliances with various Shia political leaders and gaining backing from some Shia religious experts. Among these was Ustad Muhammad Akbari, a Shia Hazara politician who broke away from Abdulali Mazari's Islamic Unity Party to establish the National Islamic Unity Party. He then aligned himself and his followers, who received the majority of the Islamic Unity Party support in the Hazara region, with the Taliban. Another important Shia political leader during this time was Syed Gardizi, a Syed Hazara from Gardais, who was named the Wulaswal, district governor, of Yakalang district, becoming the sole Shia to hold this position during the Taliban's first Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Concurrently, specific events fostered mistrust between the Taliban and Afghan Shias. The 1998 massacre at Mazar-i-Sharif stands out as the most pivotal, triggered by the betrayal and subsequent slaughter of Taliban members by an ethnic Uzbek warlord, Abdurrashid Dostum, in retaliation for a false allegation that Hazaras had decapitated a high-ranking Taliban leader, Maulawi Ihsanullah Ihsan, at Abdulali Mazari's tomb, resulting in the deaths of a large number of Hazaras. The leader of the massacre, Abdul Manan Niazi, became renowned for his dissent against the Taliban's rule, establishing the defiant High Council of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan in 2015, before his demise, which is believed to have been at the hands of the Taliban. Even after the withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan and the Taliban's return to a militant stance, the Taliban's leadership sought to broaden its ties with Afghan Shias. Shortly after the 2003 invasion of Iraq by the United States, the Taliban issued a statement titled A Message to the Mujahid People of Iraq and Afghanistan by Mullah Omar, in which he denounced sectarianism while simultaneously addressing the citizens of Iraq and Afghanistan. It is the responsibility of every Muslim to oppose all the nefarious schemes of the deceitful adversary and to prevent him from sparking conflicts among fellow Muslims. A significant aspect of American strategy involves classifying Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan based on religious and ethnic identities such as Shia and Sunni in Iraq and Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, and Uzbek in Afghanistan, with the aim of weakening popular protests and the related military opposition. Therefore, I urge the Shia Muslims in Iraq to set aside their sectarian differences under the umbrella of Shia and Sunni, and to stand together against the invading force, as unity is essential for success. Several Shia Hazara Taliban leaders have contributed to the Taliban's insurgency, mainly from Bamyan and Daikundi provinces. Within the Karabaghi tribe of Shia Hazaras, a number of combatants have chosen to side with the Taliban, influenced by their close ties with the Sunni Pashtun community that supports the Taliban. Moreover, a pro-government Shia Hazara militia from the Gizab district in the Daikundi province, known as Fidayeh, switched sides and pledged their loyalty to the Taliban several years before 2016, with an estimated 50 members. Following the 2011 Afghanistan Ashura bombings, which aimed at Shia Afghans in Kabul and Mazar-i-Sharif, the Taliban released a document titled Sectarian Killings, A Dangerous Enemy Conspiracy, by Taliban official Abdul Kahar Baki. In this document, he declared, "In Afghanistan, Sunnis and Shias have coexisted for centuries. They have lived together in communities and celebrated their shared festivals. They have fought side by side against foreign invaders for centuries. The Shia communities in Bamyan, Daikundi, and Hazarajat have actively supported the mujahideen in their fight against the foreign invaders and their puppets. The foreign occupiers are trying to spark communal hatred and violence between Sunnis and Shias in Afghanistan. The followers of Islam will only be able to reclaim their rightful place in this world by putting aside their minor differences and coming together as a unified, equal community. Lately, the Taliban have made another effort to reach out to the Shiite community by selecting a Shiite religious leader as a governor for a region and enlisting Hazaras to combat ISIS-K, aiming to shed their negative historical image and enhance their ties with the Shia-governed government of Iran. Following the Taliban's 2021 campaign, which saw the reinstatement of the Islamic Emirate, top Taliban figures, such as Deputy Prime Minister Abdul Salam Hanafi and Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, emphasized the need for cooperation between Shiites and Sunnis in Afghanistan and pledged to safeguard the Shiite population. The Ministry of Virtue and Vice have also decided to employ Shiite scholars to carry out the ministry's religious directives. Overall, the Taliban have managed to maintain a peaceful relationship with the Shiite Muslim population, though the 2022 Bakhab rebellion led to the fatalities of some Hazaras. Consistency of the Taliban's ideology. The Taliban's beliefs are not unchanging. Before taking control of Kabul, Taliban members discussed the possibility of stepping down once a government led by good Muslims was established, ensuring law and order were maintained. The way decisions were made in Kandahar was inspired by the Pashtun Tribal Council, Jirga, and the early Islamic governance model. These discussions led to reaching a consensus among the followers. As the Taliban's influence expanded, Mullah Omar started making choices on his own, without seeking input from the Jirga or traveling to other regions. He only went to Kabul, the capital, twice during his tenure. Taliban spokesperson Mullah Wakil elaborated. Our decisions are guided by the Amir al-Mu'mineen. We don't see the need for consultation. This approach aligns with our religious beliefs. We follow the Emir's perspective, even if it's the only one. There will be no president, instead, there will be an Amir al-Mu'minin. Mullah Omar will hold the highest position, and the government will not be allowed to enforce any decision he disagrees with. General elections are against the principles of Sharia, so we oppose them. A further indication that the Taliban's beliefs were changing was Mullah Omar's 1999 order to safeguard the Buddha statues at Bamyan, which were later destroyed in 2001. Evaluations and criticisms. Ahmed Rashid proposes that the destruction and suffering caused by the Soviet occupation and the years that followed shaped the Taliban's beliefs. It's mentioned that the Taliban did not embrace scholars well-versed in Islamic law and history. The students who fled as refugees, living in a society entirely male, were deprived of education in subjects like math, science, history, or geography, as well as traditional skills such as agriculture, animal husbandry, or craftsmanship. They were also unaware of their tribal and clan backgrounds. In such a setting, conflict was seen as a means of employment, and tranquility was equated with joblessness. For their leadership, extreme fundamentalism was not just a belief but also a necessity for political survival. Taliban leaders often shared with Rashid that any move towards women's liberation or education would result in losing the allegiance of their followers. The Taliban have faced criticism for their harsh treatment of those who broke their rules, and Mullah Omar has been faulted for calling himself Amir al-Mu'minin. Mullah Omar faced backlash for referring to himself as Amir al-Mu'minin, as he did not possess the academic background, lineage within a tribe, or ties to the Prophet's lineage that were typically required for such a title. The endorsement of such a title usually needed the backing of every scholar in the nation, yet only a small number of Taliban mullahs, who supported the Taliban, had officially named Omar as the Amir. Ahmed Rashid mentioned that no Afghan had taken on the title since 1834, the year when King Dost Muhammad Khan took it on before launching a campaign against the Sikh Empire in Peshawar. However, Dost Muhammad was battling foreign forces, whereas Omar was fighting against fellow Afghans. Additionally, the Taliban were criticized for labeling their 20% tax on opium shipments as zakat, which is usually restricted to 2.5% of the individual's income or assets, zakat payers' surplus. The Taliban have been likened to the 7th century Kharijites, who pioneered radical beliefs that set them apart from both the mainstream Sunni and Shia Muslims. The Kharijites were particularly infamous for their extreme stance on takfir, which involved declaring other Muslims as non-believers and considering them deserving of death. Specifically, the Taliban have been blamed for excommunicating Shia. Following the August 1998 massacre of 8,000 Shia Hazara civilians in Mazar-i-Sharif, Mullah Abdul Manan Niazi, the Taliban leader of the raid and the newly appointed governor of Mazar, made a statement from the central mosque of Mazar. "Last year, you rebelled against us and we killed you. From every corner of your homes, you attacked us. Now, we are here to confront you. The Hazaras are not Muslims and must now eliminate Hazaras. You have a choice, either convert to Islam or leave Afghanistan. We will find you wherever you go. If you rise, we will bring you down by your feet. If you conceal yourself, we will lift you by your hair." Carter Malkasian, in one of the earliest in-depth historical studies on the Afghan conflict, suggests that the Taliban are often misunderstood in the media. While Malkasian believes that oppressive is the most accurate term to describe them, he highlights that they succeeded where other governments and political figures have not. They managed to establish order and cohesion in the ungovernable territory. The Taliban limited the brutal acts and abuses of the warlord era of the civil conflict from 1992 to 1996. Malkasian also contends that the Taliban's adoption of Islamic principles into the Afghan tribal structure was creative and a significant factor in their longevity and resilience. Given that established sources of power had been demonstrated to be frail throughout the extended duration of the civil war, only religion had demonstrated its strength in Afghanistan. Over a span of 40 years marked by continuous strife, the traditionalist Islam of the Taliban was remarkably stable, despite the peace they established being described as a poor peace. Condemned practices. The Taliban have faced global criticism for their severe implementation of their own version of Islamic Sharia law, leading to severe mistreatment of numerous Afghans. During their period in power from 1996 to 2001, the Taliban strictly adhered to a rigid interpretation of Sharia, or Islamic law. They, along with their supporters, carried out mass killings of Afghan citizens, withheld food aid from 160,000 hungry people from the UN, and pursued a policy of destruction, setting fire to large swaths of productive land and annihilating over 100,000 homes. Under Taliban governance, activities and media like art, photography, and films that showed human figures or other living beings were banned. They also outlawed music that included instruments, except for the daf, a specific type of frame drum. The Taliban restricted the education of girls and young women, forbade women from engaging in employment outside of the healthcare sector, excluding male doctors from treating women, and mandated that women be accompanied by a male relative and cover themselves in a burqa whenever they were in public. Women who violated these regulations faced public lashings or executions. The Taliban severely targeted religious and ethnic minorities, engaging in cultural destruction by obliterating various historical sites, notably the renowned Buddhas of Bamiyan, which dated back to 1,500 years. The United Nations reported that the Taliban, along with their supporters, were accountable for 76% of the civilian deaths in Afghanistan in 2010, rising to 80% in the following years of 2011 and 2012. The organization's internal finances were bolstered by its participation in the illicit drug market, manufacturing and distributing drugs like heroin, as well as through extortion and kidnapping for ransom. Additionally, they gained control over mining activities in the latter part of the 2010s, which were unlawful under the previous administration. Massacre campaigns. A 55-page report by the United Nations detailed the Taliban's actions as they sought to establish dominance in northern and western Afghanistan, revealing a pattern of systematic killings of civilians. UN officials identified 15 massacres during the period from 1996 to 2001, all attributed to the Taliban's Ministry of Defense or Mullah Omar directly. One UN official drew parallels between these atrocities and those in Bosnia, advocating for their prosecution in international tribunals. /. The records also show the involvement of Arab and Pakistani military personnel in these atrocities, with bin Laden's infamous 055 Brigade being blamed for the widespread murder of Afghan citizens. Witnesses reported that Arab soldiers were equipped with long blades for slicing open throats and removing skin. The Taliban's previous envoy to Pakistan, Mullah Abdul Salam Zif, admitted in 2011 that such brutality was essential. In 1998, the United Nations accused the Taliban of withholding food aid from the UN's World Food Programme from 160,000 individuals who were already suffering from hunger and starvation due to political and military motives. The UN accused the Taliban of using starvation as a tactic for their military goals and exploiting aid as a means of warfare. On August 8, 1998, the Taliban initiated an assault on Mazar-i-Sharif. Out of 1,500 defenders, only 100 managed to survive. After seizing control, the Taliban started executing people without discrimination, particularly targeting the Hazara community. Women were subjected to rape, and numerous individuals were confined in containers, left to die from lack of air. This act of ethnic cleansing is believed to have resulted in the deaths of between 5,000 to 6,000 people. During this period, 10 Iranian diplomats and a reporter were murdered, prompting Iran to call up its military and send in 250,000 troops along its border with Afghanistan. Pakistan stepped in to mediate, and by the month's end, the deceased were safely returned to Tehran. The diplomats' murders were attributed to Saip-e-Sahaba, a Pakistani Sunni organization with strong connections to the Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI. The Taliban set fire to orchards, crops, and damaged water systems, displacing over 100,000 individuals, with the number of missing still unknown. In a significant push to reclaim the Shomali Plains north of Kabul from the United Front, the Taliban indiscriminately targeted civilians, forcing them to leave their homes. Kamal Hossein, a special correspondent for the UN, documented these and other atrocities. In Istalif, a city with a population of over 45,000, the Taliban issued a 24-hour warning for the residents to evacuate, subsequently destroying the city, leaving its inhabitants without resources. In 1999, the city of Bamiyan fell, resulting in the execution of hundreds of men, women, and children. Homes were destroyed, and some were repurposed for forced labor. In January 2001, another horrific event occurred in Yakayalang, resulting in the deaths of approximately 300 individuals, alongside the execution of two groups of Hazara elder representatives who had attempted to mediate. By the year 1999, the Taliban had driven away over 1 million individuals from the Shomali Plains and other areas, employing a brutal tactic of destroying houses, agricultural fields, and orchards through fires. Human trafficking by the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. A group of Taliban and Al-Qaeda leaders operated a network engaged in human trafficking, kidnapping women from ethnic minority groups, and selling them into sexual slavery in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Time magazine observed, the Taliban frequently justified their oppressive treatment of women by claiming it was a form of respect and protection towards them. However, their actions during their 6-year reign in Afghanistan undermined this argument. The victims of human trafficking were predominantly women from Tajik, Uzbek, Hazara, and other non-Pashtun ethnic backgrounds in Afghanistan. Some women chose to end their lives rather than endure slavery. During a Taliban and Al-Qaeda attack in 1999 in the Shomali Plains, over 600 women were captured. Arab and Pakistani militants, working with local Taliban groups, forced them into vehicles. Time magazine stated, the search for the missing women from the Shomali Plains eventually led to Jalalabad, a short distance from the border with Pakistan. Eyewitnesses reported that the women were confined to the Sar Shahi camp in the desert. The most desirable women were then selected and transported elsewhere. It was also reported that some were taken to Peshawar, with the cooperation of Pakistani border officials. Others were taken to Khost, where bin Laden had several training camps. Relief agencies said many of the vanished women were sold to brothels or into private households in Pakistan to be kept as slaves. Oppression of women. Physicians for Human Rights, in 1998, reported. According to PHR's understanding, no other government worldwide has systematically and harshly restricted half of its citizens to virtual imprisonment, imposing such restrictions to avoid physical retribution. The Taliban's brutal treatment of women was extensive and drew considerable global disapproval. The violations were numerous and forcefully implemented by the religious authorities. The Taliban issued decrees that prohibited women from receiving education, compelling girls to abandon their studies at schools and universities. Women venturing out of their homes needed a male family member to accompany them, and were required to wear the burqa, a traditional attire that covers the entire body with only a narrow opening for visibility. Women found guilty of defiance faced public beatings. In a particular case, a young woman named Sohaila was accused of adultery after being seen with a non-relative man. She was publicly whipped in Ghazi Stadium, enduring 100 lashes. The employment of women was limited to the medical field, where male medical staff were not allowed to treat women and girls. This broad prohibition on women's employment led to the closure of many primary schools, as nearly all the teachers were women, thereby limiting educational opportunities for both girls and boys. Tough limitations intensified following the Taliban's takeover of the capital. In February 1998, religious authorities compelled all females to leave the city's roads and implemented fresh rules requiring individuals to darken their windows to prevent outsiders from seeing women inside. Violence against civilians. The United Nations stated that the Taliban and its supporters were accountable for 76% of civilian deaths in Afghanistan in 2009, 75% in 2010, and 80% in 2011. Human Rights Watch noted a significant increase in the Taliban's bombings and attacks that resulted in civilian deaths, particularly in 2006. This period saw at least 669 Afghan civilians lose their lives in at least 350 attacks, with many of these being deliberate attacks on civilians. The United Nations observed a nearly 50% increase in civilian deaths caused by both the Taliban and government forces from 2007 to 2009. The Taliban's high number of civilian casualties is attributed to their growing reliance on improvised explosive devices, IEDs, such as the Taliban planting 16 IEDs in girls' schools. In 2009, Colonel Richard Kemp, who previously led British forces in Afghanistan and was the intelligence coordinator for the British government, compared the Taliban's tactics and strategy to those of Hamas in Gaza. Kemp stated, "Similar to Hamas in Gaza, the Taliban in southern Afghanistan excel at hiding themselves among the civilian population for cover, then blending in for safety. Women and children undergo training to combat, gather information, and transport weapons and supplies for conflicts. Female suicide bombers are becoming more frequent. It has become so commonplace to use women to protect shooters as they confront NATO troops that it hardly merits discussion. Schools and homes are often rigged with traps. Snipers hide in homes purposely packed with women and children. Discrimination against Hindus and Sikhs. Since ancient times, both Hindus and Sikhs have had a significant presence in Afghanistan, excelling in areas like education and commerce. After the Afghan Civil War, a large number of them started moving to India and other nations. The emergence of the Taliban and their rigorous implementation of Islamic law resulted in intense discrimination against these groups, pushing them further away and leading to the formation of communities abroad. The Taliban banned non-Muslims from building new places of worship, but allowed them to continue using existing ones. They also prohibited non-Muslims from criticizing Muslims, required them to mark their homes with yellow cloths on the roofs, and restricted them from living in the same houses as Muslims. Moreover, non-Muslim women were expected to wear yellow dresses with distinctive symbols to keep their distance from Muslims, with a particular focus on Hindus and Sikhs. In May 2001, the Taliban ordered Hindus to wear special badges, similar to the treatment of Jews by the Nazis. Despite these severe conditions, Sikhs and Jews were generally treated more favorably than Afghan Shiites, Hindus, and Christians. Relationship with other religious groups. The Taliban also targeted Afghanistan's tiny Christian population, frequently engaging in violence against Western aid personnel and Christians during the conflict. From 2008 to 2012, the Taliban often took credit for the killings of Western and Afghan medical or aid personnel, fueled by doubts about their loyalty, accusations of spreading Christianity, and concerns that polio vaccines might render Muslim children sterile. In August 2008, 3 Western women employed by the aid organization International Rescue Committee were killed in Kabul, with the Taliban asserting they were foreign agents. In October 2008, Gail Williams, a British woman employed by the Christian UK charity Serve Afghanistan, was also killed near Kabul. The Taliban accused her organization of spreading Christianity in Afghanistan. By October 2008, a total of 29 aid workers, including 5 foreigners, had been killed. In August 2010, the Taliban took credit for the deaths of 10 medical aid workers in Badakhshan province. These individuals were part of the International Assistance Mission, a self-described non-profit Christian organization. The Taliban accused them of spreading Christianity and possessing Bibles in Dari, although the International Assistance Mission refuted these claims. In December 2012, unknown assailants murdered 4 female UN polio personnel in Karachi, Pakistan, raising concerns that the murders were connected to Taliban opposition to polio immunizations. A Taliban leader issued a ban on polio vaccinations in 2012, and by 2013, the Afghan government halted its vaccination programs in Nuristan province because of Taliban pressure. Nonetheless, by May 2013, Taliban officials changed their position, endorsing polio immunizations provided they were consistent with local, Islamic, and cultural norms. Restrictions on modern education. Prior to the Taliban's ascendancy, learning was deeply cherished in Afghanistan, drawing students from various parts of Asia and the Middle East to Kabul University. Nonetheless, the Taliban implemented harsh limitations, prohibiting the education of women, shutting down all non-religious modern schools, and advocating exclusively for Quranic studies. Consequently, half of Afghanistan's educational facilities were demolished, and there were frequent violent assaults on both educators and learners. A 1998 UNICEF study revealed that 90% of female students and 66% of male students were not attending school. By the year 2000, the number of Afghan children completing primary education was less than 4 to 5%, and the figure for those continuing to higher education was even lower. Attacks on educational facilities persisted even after the Taliban's removal from power, with more than 1,000 schools damaged or taken over, and 100 educators and students losing their lives by 2017, as reported by the United Nations. Cultural genocide. The Taliban engaged in cultural annihilation by obliterating the historical and cultural treasures of Afghanistan. During the early 1990s, the National Museum of Afghanistan faced numerous assaults and thefts, resulting in the loss of 70% of its 100,000 items. On August 11, 1998, the Puli Kumri Public Library was completely destroyed, taking with it its extensive collection of over 55,000 books and manuscripts. On March 2, 2001, the Buddhas of Bamiyan were blown up under the command of Taliban leader Mullah Omar. That same year, Taliban groups utilized sledgehammers and axes to destroy at least 2,750 ancient artworks in the National Museum of Afghanistan. The ban on music, a crucial aspect of Afghan heritage, was also implemented, leading to the demise of numerous musicians. Ban on entertainment and recreational activities. In the initial period of their governance, 1996 to 2001, the Taliban prohibited numerous leisure pursuits and games, including soccer, kite flying, and chess. They also outlawed forms of entertainment such as TVs, movie theaters, and music that featured instruments, as well as VCRs and satellite receivers. The use of musical instruments and any visual depictions of animals were forbidden, though the daf, a kind of frame drum, was exempt from this prohibition. It was reported that children found engaging in kite flying faced physical punishment. This limitation motivated Khaled Hosseini to pen The Kite Runner, a book that draws from his own experiences growing up in Afghanistan. Forced conscription and conscription of children. The Taliban forced men into both the military and civilian roles using firearms. A study from Oxford University showed that there was a large-scale recruitment of children into the military during the late 1990s. Many orphaned boys turned to militias for jobs, food, housing, and safety. The Taliban depended greatly on young groups, with families who owned land and needing to supply one young man and cover $500 in costs. In August 1999, 5,000 students, between the ages of 15 and 35, left their madrassas in Pakistan to join the Taliban. Leadership and organization. Kandahar faction and Haqqani network. Kandahar faction. The Kandahar branch of the Taliban can be traced back to the city of Kandahar, where Mullah Mohammad Omar established the group. This branch is known for its isolated and countryside-based characteristics, with a primary focus on managing its ancestral base in the south of Afghanistan. The group's leadership is made up of individuals such as Hibatullah Akhundzada, who has held the position of supreme leader since 2016. Hibatullah, a religious scholar from Kandahar, represents the group's spiritual and ideological leadership. Moreover, Mullah Yaqub, the offspring of the Taliban's founder Muhammad Omar, is instrumental in directing the group's military activities. Abdul Ghani Baradar, another key figure linked to the Kandahar branch, was a co-founder of the Taliban with Muhammad Omar. Baradar, hailing from Uruzgan province, was the deputy prime minister as of March 2022. His role underscores the group's strong ties to its beginnings and its early leadership. Haqqani network. While the Kandahar group concentrates its efforts locally, the Haqqani network operates on a wider level, with its interests reaching past Afghanistan's borders. Named after its founder, Jalaluddin Haqqani, this network has a long history of maintaining strong connections with Pakistan's intelligence agencies and has aimed for global jihadist goals. The current head of the Haqqani network, Sirajuddin Haqqani, acts as the interim interior minister in the Taliban government. He holds considerable power over security roles and intelligence agencies, especially in the area where Afghanistan and Pakistan meet. Sirajuddin's role highlights the network's strategic significance and its impact on the region's political landscape. Current leadership. Hibatullah Akhundzada. As the supreme leader of the Taliban since 2016, Hibatullah Akhundzada provides spiritual guidance and ideological direction to the movement. His background as a religious scholar from Kandahar province underscores his influence within the organization. Abdul Ghani Baradar. Abdul Ghani Baradar, a co-founder of the Taliban and native of Uruzgan province, serves as deputy prime minister. Despite his past imprisonment in Pakistan, Baradar remains a key figure within the Taliban leadership, contributing to strategic decision-making. Mullah Yaqub. Mullah Yaqub, the son of Taliban founder Muhammad Omar, leads the faction's military operations. His role emphasizes the continuity of leadership within the movement and the importance of familial ties in shaping its direction. Sirajuddin Haqqani. Sirajuddin Haqqani, the leader of the Haqqani network, holds significant influence as the acting interior minister within the Taliban government. His control over security positions along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border underscores the network's strategic significance. Shir Mohammad Abbas Staniksai. Shir Mohammad Abbas Staniksai, a former head of the Taliban's political office in Doha, has played a crucial role in diplomatic efforts. His background from Logar province and academic qualifications contribute to his diplomatic acumen. Abdul Hakim Ishaqzai. Abdul Hakim Ishaqzai, the chief negotiator of the Taliban's political office in Doha, succeeded Staniksai in 2020. His leadership of the Taliban's Council of Religious Scholars highlights the movement's commitment to Islamic principles. Suhail Shaheen. Suhail Shaheen, nominated as the Taliban's ambassador to the UN, brings a background in journalism and diplomacy to his role. His previous experience as a spokesperson in Doha underscores his proficiency in communication and representation. Zabihullah Mujahid. Zabihullah Mujahid, serving as the Taliban spokesperson since 2007, has been the public face of the movement. His role in communicating the Taliban's message to the outside world highlights the importance of media relations in shaping perceptions of the group. Overview. Background. The Taliban's beginnings can be linked to the chaotic environment in Afghanistan after the Soviet exit in 1989. At first, it aimed to bring back order and implement Islamic rule, slowly expanding its influence over vast areas. Roles and roles. Over its existence, the Taliban has seen a series of leaders, including notable figures such as Mullah Mohammad Omar and Mullah Akhtar Mansour, who have influenced its direction. The present leadership combines religious, military, and diplomatic skills, with individuals like Hibatullah Akhundzada offering spiritual direction and others like Abdul Ghani Baradar playing a role in making strategic choices. Power struggles. The Taliban's power struggles are marked by internal factions, with a rift between the Kandahar group and the Haqqani network showcasing differing goals and concerns. Despite attempts to appear as a cohesive entity, these divisions continue, highlighting the difficulties in establishing authority and managing efficiently. Administrative obstacles. In its struggle to manage governance, the Taliban encounters various obstacles, such as ethnic diversity, regional complexities, and global attention. The way the movement deals with these obstacles will determine its future path and impact. Economic activities. In the early months of the Taliban's rule in Kabul in 1996, there was a fleeting sense of calm in the city, which briefly sparked hope in the financial sector. However, this hopeful period was short-lived as the Afghan currency started to lose its value rapidly. The Taliban quickly put in place strict economic measures, including a severe 50% tax on any business operating in Afghanistan. Failing to pay this high tax led to brutal consequences, with companies at risk of violence and having their property seized. On top of the high tax on businesses, the Taliban also levied a 6% import tax on all incoming goods. By 1998, they had secured control over major airports and border points, effectively controlling all trade. This monopoly allowed them to have a strong hold on the economy but also crushed competition and stifled new ideas, leading to a widespread economic slowdown. These economic strategies led to Afghanistan's average income dropping below $200 per person by 2001, pushing the nation to the edge of complete economic ruin. The vast majority of the population struggled to survive, facing poverty, shortages of food, and a lack of access to essential items. Even in the face of a severe economic crisis, the Taliban government was able to keep itself afloat through a variety of methods. A key way they managed to do this was through a vast network of illegal smuggling activities, especially with Pakistan under the Transit Treaty. This underground trade network, valued at billions of dollars, ensured the Taliban had a consistent flow of income, with the group reportedly earning between $100 and $130 million each year. The opium trade also played a crucial role in the Taliban's finances. Initially against the drug business, the Taliban changed their position by 1999, seeing opium farming as a profitable way to collect taxes. With control over 96% of Afghanistan's poppy fields, opium became their main source of income, using the money from opium sales to support their military campaigns and keep their government running. The environmental consequences of these economic activities were devastating, leading to extensive deforestation due to the illegal timber trade. Moreover, by the time the Afghan interim administration took over in 2001, the country's infrastructure was in a terrible state, with communication systems broken, roads ruined, and government buildings in a state of disrepair. Despite global attempts to cut off the Taliban's financial support by imposing trade restrictions and freezing their assets, the group continued to make money through different methods, such as demanding payments, mining, and collecting taxes. Yet, these sources of income were not enough to ease the financial struggles of the Afghan people. More recently, the Taliban's choice in November 2021 to require the use of Afghanis for all financial dealings and to prohibit the use of foreign money represented a major change in their economic strategy. Moreover, their move to end Afghanistan's pension scheme in April 2024 led to demonstrations by those who had retired or served in the military, underscoring the persistent economic and social conflicts in the nation. International relations. Throughout the conflict, the Taliban received backing from various extremist groups, such as the Haqqani Network, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. It is believed that nations like China, Iran, Pakistan, Qatar, Russia, and Saudi Arabia have allegedly backed the Taliban. However, these governments have all denied giving any assistance to the Taliban. Similarly, the Taliban have also claimed to have not received any support from foreign countries. At its zenith, the Taliban's government was officially recognized by 3 countries: Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Historically, the United Arab Emirates and Turkmenistan were also thought to have supported the Taliban. Some countries consider it a terrorist organization. During its period of control, 1996 to 2001, when it controlled 90% of Afghanistan, the Taliban government, also known as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, received diplomatic recognition from just 3 countries: the United Arab Emirates, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, all of which were major donors. A significant number of countries and groups, including the United Nations, acknowledged the Islamic State of Afghanistan, 1992 to 2002, which was a part of the United Front, also known as the Northern Alliance, as the rightful government of Afghanistan. In terms of its international relations, the Taliban's rule in Afghanistan adopted a stance of isolationism, stating, "The Taliban are committed to not interfering in the domestic matters of other nations and similarly wish to avoid external meddling in their own country's internal affairs." Historically, the Taliban received backing from Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, while countries like Iran, Russia, Turkey, India, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan united against the Taliban, backing the Northern Alliance. Following the Taliban's downfall in late 2001, the group's supporters shifted. Antonio Giustazzi's research indicates that from 2005 to 2015, the primary sources of financial support for the Taliban were countries such as Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, China, and Qatar, along with private benefactors from Saudi Arabia, Al-Qaeda, and, briefly, the Islamic State. After taking control, the Taliban's way of running Afghanistan has faced heavy criticism globally, even though the Afghan government has consistently asked for worldwide acknowledgement and cooperation. Mohammad Hassan Akhund, the acting prime minister, declared that his temporary government has fulfilled all the necessary criteria for being recognized as a legitimate government. In an attempt to secure recognition, the Taliban submitted a letter in September 2021 to the UN, proposing Suhail Shaheen as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan's permanent representative, a proposal that had been previously denied by the UN Credentials Committee in 2021. On October 10, 2021, Russia arranged a meeting with the Taliban in Moscow to increase its influence in Central Asia. Delegates from 10 nations, Russia, China, Pakistan, India, Iran, and 5 Central Asian countries that were once part of the Soviet Union, participated in the discussions, which took place during the Taliban's inaugural visit to Europe since they regained control in mid-August 2021. The Taliban received support from 10 regional nations for the proposal to organize a United Nations donor conference aimed at preventing the nation from facing an economic meltdown and a humanitarian disaster. They urged the UN to quickly set up such a conference to aid in the country's reconstruction. Russian authorities also expressed a need to take action against Islamic State, IS, militants, who they claimed have been expanding their operations in Afghanistan following the Taliban's ascendancy. The Taliban's delegation, headed by Deputy Prime Minister Abdul Salam Hanafi, argued that isolating Afghanistan would be detrimental to everyone's interests, stating that the extremist group did not present a security risk to any other nation. The Taliban requested global recognition of their government, yet no nation has yet acknowledged the new Afghan administration. On January 23, 2022, a Taliban delegation made its way to Oslo, where they engaged in confidential discussions during their first official visit to Western Europe and their second official visit to Europe since their return to power. Western diplomats conveyed to the Taliban that the provision of humanitarian aid to Afghanistan would be contingent upon the country's progress in human rights. The Taliban group, under the leadership of the interim foreign minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, convened with top officials from France's Foreign Affairs Department, the United Kingdom's envoy Nigel Casey, the European Union's representative for Afghanistan, and members of Norway's Foreign Affairs team. This gathering took place after the UN Security Council's Counterterrorism Committee declared that it would prolong the exemption for the travel ban of 14 Taliban members to participate in discussions, along with a restricted permission to use funds for travel. However, the Afghan Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi expressed skepticism towards the international community's demand for the creation of a government that includes everyone, viewing it as a political justification for the Oslo visit. During the United Nations Security Council session in New York on January 26, 2022, the Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre mentioned that the discussions in Oslo seemed serious and authentic. Norway maintains that these talks do not signify any endorsement or acknowledgement of the Taliban. In the same session, the representative from Russia argued that trying to engage the Taliban through force is ineffective, urging Western nations and their donors to release the funds that have been frozen. The representative from China pointed out that the lack of progress in aid deliveries since the enactment of UNSC 2615, 2021, indicates that the matter has become entangled in politics, with some groups trying to leverage aid as a tool for negotiation. Iran, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, the Russian Federation, and China were among the initial nations to endorse the diplomatic status of envoys appointed by the Taliban, though this does not signify formal acknowledgement. Being labeled as a terrorist group. More details: terrorism by religion, catalogue of designated terrorist entities, and terrorism motivated by religion. The Taliban organization was declared unlawful in the following nations by 2023. Canada, Russia, Tajikistan. Formerly Kazakhstan, 2005 to 2023. United States, 2002 to 2015, although it was not included in the United States Department of State's list of foreign terrorist organizations. The United Nations and non-governmental organizations. Even with the support from the United Nations, UN, and various non-governmental organizations, NGOs, provided, refer to Afghanistan during Taliban governance, the Taliban's views towards the UN and NGOs during the 1996 to 2001 period were often marked by distrust. The UN didn't acknowledge the Taliban as the rightful government of Afghanistan, a majority of foreign donors and aid staff were not of Muslim faith, and the Taliban voiced strong opposition to the type of assistance provided by the UN. Maulvi Jalilullah Malvazada, the Attorney General of the Taliban in 1997, articulated their stance. Please clarify the type of education desired by the UN. This is a Western godless policy that permits such vulgar freedoms for women, which could lead to extramarital affairs and the demise of Islam. In any Islamic nation where adultery becomes prevalent, that nation is destroyed and falls under the control of the infidels because their men adopt the role of women, who are then defenseless. Anyone attempting to communicate with us must do so within the boundaries of Islam. The Holy Quran should not be bent to suit the demands of others, rather, it is the duty of individuals to conform to the teachings of the Holy Quran. In July 1998, the Taliban forcibly shut down all NGO offices after these organizations did not relocate to a destroyed former polytechnic college as directed. A month later, the UN also closed its offices. By 2000, the UN imposed sanctions on Taliban officials and leaders for their support of Osama bin Laden. Several Taliban leaders have since been eliminated. In 2009, British Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband and US Secretary Hillary Clinton advocated for discussions with regular Taliban fighters while ignoring their top leaders, who were allegedly dedicated to global jihad. Qaid, the highest-ranking UN official in Afghanistan, proposed direct talks with the Taliban, including Mullah Omar, despite Omar's rejection of such overtures as long as foreign forces remained in Afghanistan. In 2010, the UN removed sanctions from the Taliban and asked for their leaders and others to be taken off terrorism watch lists. That same year, the US and Europe expressed their backing for President Karzai's latest peace negotiation efforts with the Taliban. In popular culture, the Taliban were depicted in Khaled Hosseini's best-selling 2003 novel The Kite Runner and its 2007 movie adaptation. The Taliban have also been depicted in American movies, notably in Lone Survivor, 2013, which is based on a true story. Indian films have also shown the Taliban in Kabul Express, 2006, and Escape from Taliban, 2003, both based on actual novels. Escape from Taliban, 2003, is based on the novel A Kabuliwala's Bengali Wife, written by Sushmita Banerjee, who was killed by the Taliban in 2013.